It's a beautiful day in this neighborhood, a beautiful day for a neighbor. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? It's a neighborly
Now
day
joining
in
us
this
is a
neighborhood,
very
a
special
neighborly
guest
day
from the
for a
neighborhood,
neighbor. Would you
someone
be
who's
mine?
become a really good friend of mine over the last few years and who has a wealth of stories, many of which he's going to share in person when we do Mr. Rogers' Week of Kindness in April. Please welcome David Newell. David, you wore so many hats on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, and
Right.
even personally with Fred. Tell us a little bit about all the different things you kind of did with the program and in Fred's life.
Well, I was hired originally to be the prop master. I was in charge of getting all the props and the costumes, and just being Fred's assistant behind the scenes. Well, when I first met Fred, it was a meeting, and I hadn't met him before. It was a meeting in Pittsburgh where we make the program, and we met for about an hour. And I hadn't met Fred before, but I was doing my interview, so to speak. And we talked for about an hour. I had just returned from London visiting my cousin. He was in the Navy, and I just came back, and Fred was telling me how much he liked to travel. And on and story. He talked about everything except the job at hand. And at the end of about an hour, he looked at me and said, "Well, when can you start?"
You did the props, you did the publicity, and of course, your iconic role as Mr. McFeely.
Yes, and that was sort of tacked on at the end of the meeting. He gave me the scripts to look for the props for the first month of programs. He said, "Oh, by the way, I'm writing," and he wrote his own material. "I'm writing in a delivery man in this series of programs." This was the new series of programs. It had been regional before, but this was national. And I want you to play it. And here I am. I thought I had a job for 1 year, and I'm talking to you 50 some years later. So it was a wonderful, wonderful time.
That's awesome. Last year we were so privileged to have you come to Orlando, along with Hedda Sherapin, who's still working for Fred Rogers Productions over
Right.
50 years, and Margie Whitmer, a good friend of yours who had been the producer of the second run of the show. And the stories that the three of you told were not only just amazing, but they brought back such great memories for many of us who either grew up watching Mr. Rogers or who our kids watch Mr. Rogers. And it was just a wonderful thing. You were at every event that we had last year. What was that like for you to 50 years after the end of the show or the beginning of the show, still talking about Mr. Rogers' Neighbor and seeing the reaction from all the folks in the audiences?
Yes, I never thought I would be. As I said earlier, I never thought I'd be here talking about it with you right now. And last year at the conference, I would meet people who grew up with the program. People, the first generation of people who watched the program are now in their 50s.
Wow.
And I met every generation down to, I think we went to a high school or elementary school, and met children who watched the program. And then people came to the library. We had an event at the library, all different ages. And it's remarkable. You think you're doing the program for the four walls of the studio, and you don't really realize until you get out and to events like the Kindness Week how much of an impact the program had on people and families. And that I marvel at. And again, that's the power of television.
I want to talk real quickly about this year's events. We have so many fun events and entertaining events, most of them free. Those that are not are very low cost. We've got the tea time, and we've got one session that you're going to lead with me. We'll do it together. That is, I think, going to be really fascinating. And there's just so many stories to tell. We can only fit a few of them in this video and in this week. But there was the time that Margaret Hamilton, who played the Wicked Witch of the West, came to the neighborhood, and you were a big part of that, weren't you?
I was, and I'll tell the complete story at the Kindness Week, but I'll just quickly say that a lot of adults mentioned to me how, as adults, and when they show that movie on TV, they still do, how afraid they are of the witch. They remember it from their childhood. And Fred said, "Well, if you can find Margaret Hamilton, I'll write the script." And I did find her, the actress Margaret Hamilton, and she said, "I'd love to come on my. I've watched The Neighborhood with my grandchildren. I'd love to come on and set the story straight about how she too was upset because it scared children, and she wanted to come on and show children that she's an actress." And that's what we did on the program. And we'll be seeing clips of that at the Kindness Week, right?
Yes,
And
absolutely.
the full story will be there, and I'll tell. There's much more to the story, but that is the gist of it. So come to Kindness Week, April 1st through the 6th, right?
Absolutely, that's exactly right. And I know you've shared a lot more stories about Margaret Hamilton with me, and I can't wait for you to come to Orlando and share them with everybody else. David, thank you so much for taking time. I just think it's just so wonderful that, you could be sitting on a beach down here in Florida and enjoying retirement, but you and our other Pittsburgh friends keep coming out and telling the stories about Fred and Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Thank you again, David.
Thank you, Rich. And remember, bring your cameras. We'd like to take pictures together too. So now, before we close off, I'm going to count to 3, and we're both going to say my catchphrase, and you know what that is, right?
I do.
Okay, and people watching this can say it too. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Speedy delivery.
We'll see you
Rich.
soon.